Greetings, everyone. This is the Hipster Snek, and today I'm going to be, posting a video, which I said I wouldn't do. Turns out I lied. You're getting one this week, because this past weekend I went to see Sonic the Hedgehog 3 in theaters. And I just gotta say, if you went back in time 20 years and told teenage Snek that they would make a Sonic the Hedgehog movie, I probably would either not believe you or assume that it would just be garbage. Or alternatively, I would just call you a liar. But here we are on the third Sonic the Hedgehog film. And it's the best one. Of the three, this is up and away the best of the three. I liked the first one. The first one was very much kind of maybe a little by the numbers buddy cop kind of experience. Very fish out of water video game character in the real world kind of story. But the story was done well, and it was an entertaining film. The second film played down the human characters, introduced Knuckles and Tails, and built up a bit more lore with the introduction of things like the Master Emerald and the Chaos Emeralds. This movie basically adapts the story of Sonic Adventure 2. The only reason I hesitate to say that with any real clarity is because even though it does adapt Sonic Adventure 2, it's not going to be a completely faithful retelling. Things are changed because this is a 2-hour movie and it does not have the luxury of an 8 to 10 hour action adventure game told from multiple perspectives. So there's going to be limitations, there's going to be changes, and some things I completely understood why they changed because otherwise it was kind of, would have been pointless. Other things were more convenient, and other things they simply really had no choice. There was not time to go into everything. This, of course, means that most of the story revolves around Shadow the Hedgehog. And Keanu Reeves knocks it out of the park. I thought he would. I had no doubts. But to hear it in motion was even better than I expected. It was poetry in motion. The CG is out of this world good. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Shadow all look great. And the technical work to have Jim Carrey as both Ivo Robotnik Eggman and as Gerald Robotnik was just really excellently done. There's even a little joke that they pepper in, making a reference to the one actor, two roles thing happening between them. But that's really the only meta joke. I fully expected Sonic to make a wisecrack that Shadow sounded like Keanu after he kind of had a little bit of hero worship for Keanu Reeves in the first film, but they don't. They actually don't do that. Speaking of the sense of humor of this film is very much like the other two films. If you liked the jokes and the comedy and the character banter as seen in those films, you're going to like this one's sense of humor as well. The action here is a step up. Things are a little bit rougher. The movie starts, the first 5 minutes, starts with Prison Island and these gun agents just getting pummeled by Shadow. No, there's no blood. There's no viscera. They don't go crazy with it. But you see him punching and kicking people and throwing them across the room. And sometimes it's played for slapstick, and most of the time it's not. Most of the time you are supposed to believe that he has seriously injured people. So that's kind of cool on its own. The story picks up on Prison Island as Shadow is broken out of containment. We then kind of jump to Sonic and friends as Gunn rushes in and recruits them to deal with the fact that Shadow is now free. Gunn is really evasive with their answers, and Sonic is like, well, it's no big deal. We beat Eggman twice. This will be just as simple. But they lose. Shadow mops the floor with all three of them. We actually saw that in kind of some of the first trailers they show. That happens really early in the film. You are not left waiting long to see some really good action scenes. So that was really cool. The next thing I'll say is they play their cards really well with regards to which characters they're focusing on the most at any given time. By that I mean Tom and Maddie, James Marsden and Tika Sumpter's characters, get some really great heartfelt moments throughout this film. And I think if they played it well, they have some good screen time, but it's paced more around what Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are doing instead, which I think is to the movie's credit. Shadow, Eggman, Gerald Robotnik, and Agent Stone have a really interesting set of interactions that I think are just really, really well done. One of my favorite bits was this joke where Ivo Robotnik and his grandfather Gerald go in to do the next part of their plan, their nefarious scheme, and Shadow is just like, "Oh, I need to get my revenge," and Stone's like, "You are really high strung. Let's go make some guacamole or something." And Shadow's just like, revenge guac." And I was like, I wasn't expecting a callback to that weird joke in the first film, but I'm glad they did it. The movie's primary themes are of family and of revenge, and I think it plays it well. Now, mind you, this is a family/kids film, so they don't do anything revolutionary or groundbreaking with it. Instead, they focus on a simple story executed in a fun and entertaining way. As said, if you enjoyed the first two films, I think you will definitely enjoy this one, probably more than the others, because there is such a tight through line and a heavy focus on Sonic and Shadow stories and a bit less faffing about. That was a complaint I heard a lot about the first film, is there was too much focus on the boring human element. Well, I will say that most of the established human cast at least gets a cameo, if not a major role, but they're not the main focus of the film. I feel like all of that is executed in such a way that it works to the film's credit. That is going to be my spoiler-free review. So I'm going to drop the spoiler warning here. You have been warned.
Warning. It is a non-stop spoiler onslaught going forward. Abandon all pretenses, ye who enter here.
And I'm going to get a little bit more into detail, but only a little, because this is such a good adaptation. Sonic Adventure 2 story is not exactly straightforward, and I've actually had friends and coworkers ask, like, "Hey, what's the deal with Shadow the Hedgehog?" And I'm like, "Oh boy, let me try to explain this as best as I can." The movie has to simplify a lot. So a lot of Shadow's backstory is left not really expounded upon. Like, there is no ultimate life form project. Shadow is left very much in vagary, but deliberately, presumably so that they can revisit it in the future if that's something they feel they want to do. One of the big changes is you actually see several flashbacks of Shadow and Maria having a life in this facility. It's not the space colony arc. There is no space colony arc. Maria doesn't even appear to be sick in this version. That's just never even brought up. That's basically just not important. So what you get instead is this young girl in this heavily military classified sterile environment trying to find fun and warmth, and her befriending this very cautious and unsure of himself alien hedgehog creature. And the two of them becoming friends, I think, is one of those things that serves the film extremely well. It adds heart to who Shadow was growing up, and why he is the way he is, and why he is so bitter about everything that happened. So excellent work. Mad props to the writers. They played their strongest cards where they needed to be played. The movie also has several references. Some of the Sonic music is finally used in the movie. It took them 3 films, but they did it. Live and Learn cues up a couple times. Eggman's cell phone ringer is the opening chords to Eggman from Sonic Adventure 2, so nice touch. There was a couple others, like they reused the MIDI of Green Hill Zone at one point. So nice. And it felt like a lot of attention was paid to little details that fans of the game would get that wouldn't interfere with a non-fan's enjoyment of the film. There's a bit where at the very start of the film where Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are about to jump out of the gun helicopter to confront Shadow for the first time, and Sonic does the line from Sonic Adventure 2 where he's like, "No food or movies, I'm out of here," and I'm just like, nice, very nice. And there's a bit where Tails is holding Sonic, who has Knuckles holding onto his leg, so it looks like their totem formation in Sonic Heroes, and little things like that. A normie wouldn't know that, but nerds who have been ingrained in the Sonic fandom, as long as I have, for example, will appreciate for what it is. There are also there's a Chow Garden, which turns out to be a theme restaurant in Japan in the style of like Hello Kitty. It's very, very cute, and I love the fact that they did it. Now I will say, this one's darker than the other films. People die. Like, couple people die. And they don't try to sugarcoat it. They don't come out and say it in a crass way, but they leave no ambiguity as to what has happened. And I was kind of surprised. The movie doesn't pull its punches in that respect. You get to see these characters who you wouldn't think would be killed off suddenly very brutally get killed off. And I will say some of the things that we were confused about in the trailers do make sense in context. The way they handle some of the story beats are a bit different from Sonic Adventure 2, but at the same time, they're very thematically aligned with what Sonic Adventure 2 was going for. That being said, I will say it was a little bit different than expected in some respects. For example, chaos control is never mentioned. Shadow can warp around, but it's just a thing he can do. He just warps short distances because he can. And it's never really addressed. He doesn't need the Chaos Emeralds to do it, he just can. The Chaos Emeralds are not that big of a plot point. They don't even really get mentioned until the film's almost over. And I gotta say, the final battle sequence is worth the cost of admission to this film by itself. I'm not going to go too much into it. If you played Sonic Adventure 2, you probably have a decent idea. Or then again, maybe you don't, because it's not what I expected, but it was very well done. Also, there is a mid-credit roll sequence hinting that there will be a Sonic 4, and the production company has already announced there will be a Sonic the Hedgehog 4. And the reveal this time was not what I was expecting. I was caught a bit off guard. And all I will say is it looks like they might want to adapt Sonic CD next, which is not the direction I thought we were going. But you know what? It is what it is. This one is up and away the best film of the lot. If I had complaints, and I do, to be fair, there is some faffing about. They really wanted to get the best bang for their buck out of Jim Carrey. So, of course, we have like the weird TikTok dance montages, which are entertaining. I didn't dislike them. But it's a very new generational humor. It's a very loud, flashy kind of humor. And I grew up on more subtle, downplayed styles of comedy. So I think they really could have cut some of that down and had a stronger film for their trouble. Another thing is, like, some of the changes made perfect sense, and I understand why they did it. At the same time, I will say there were a couple where I was like, yes, but why? Like, what was the specific reasoning behind it? And there were two continuity issues. No, one's a continuity issue. One was I just wasn't really clear on why. It is mentioned in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, because I rewatched the first two films in preparation for this film, and in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, it is mentioned by the Olive Garden guy that Gun was formed in the wake of the battle in San Francisco, which was the first film's events, and had been around for like about a year. This movie says that's not true. Gun's been around since before the events 50 years ago when Gerald and Shadow first met. Now, I think there's a very easy in-universe explanation for this. Like, Gun had existed all that time as a Black Ops kind of thing, but then after San Francisco, they made them more, like, publicly known, and so, like, oh yeah, they were quote-unquote founded just last year, even though they've really been there all along, kind of thing. Which I think might be what they're implying, but no one comes out and says that, so it's a little unclear. The next thing I will say is Sonic goes through some of the initial battles and kind of gets rattled a little by them, and then he just kind of decides that he can't trust a gun, kind of suddenly, and that hunch alone basically causes a very large operation against gun forces for one leg of the film, and I just don't know what it is they're trying to set up here. There's this lady who works in gun who's set up almost like she's supposed to be a secondary antagonist, and that goes nowhere. There's literally nothing followed up on it, and she's really just not that major a character. So I don't know if they're setting her up to be a potential future villain, or maybe like an anti-hero. It's a little unclear where they're going with that. And I have to say, this is going to be super rude, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a bit where Tom and Maddie get these cloaking devices from Tails that let them blend into the gun headquarters. So Maddie hits it and turns into that lady from Gun. I can't remember her name right now. She wasn't that major a character. And Tom, like, seems to be like, oh, wow, she's so beautiful. And I'm like, Tika Sumter's way hotter than her. I'm sorry. That's in this movie about talking colorful cartoon animals. That was what broke my suspension of disbelief. I'm sorry. No offense to the actress, but like they really were trying to make her a little bit shady, and they weren't trying to make her particularly glamorous. Whereas, Tika Sumter is a very pretty lady. I'm just saying. It was a weird scene, and it didn't really feel like it was all that necessary. I really want to get this movie on DVD when it comes out and see like how many cut scenes were removed from this movie, because there's got to be more. I feel like they were having way too much fun with the production of this one. I feel like there's going to be a lot. Anyway, I've rambled on for about twice as long as I initially intended to. That was Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Go see it. It's really freaking good. There's going to be a fourth one, and if this team shows the same level of dedication and devotion to that film that they've shown for the first three, then I am on board. Let's do this. Let's have the Sonic the Hedgehog extended cinematic universe with 12 and 13 different movies. As long as they're the same quality, I'll keep going. I'll keep watching. I'll keep buying tickets because this movie was great. So go see it. Anyway, this has been the Hipster Snek, and I will see you next time.